I was never supposed to be the one to take care of Grandpa. When my mum, dad, and older sister left for their month-long vacation in Italy, I thought it would be the usual drop by once or twice a week to check on Grandpa, help with his meds, maybe bring him a couple of meals. But it wasn't usual. Grandpa had been getting worse, slowly but steadily. The Parkinson's had progressed, and his once sharp mind was starting to fade. It wasn't a secret in the family. Everyone knew he wasn't the man he used to be. But no one wanted to be around for it, so it was me. I didn't mind at first. It wasn't like I had anything better to do, anyway. I was in my mid-20s, just starting to get my life on track. The hours I spent at Grandpa's place became my routines sitting with him, listening to stories from a time I only knew from history books. But he was still Grandpa, the one who taught me to fish, who let me stay up late with him watching old westerns, the one who loved me unconditionally, even when I didn't deserve it. The days went by, and the family, mum, dad, and my sister kept sending their texts, their pictures of pasta in Italy, enjoying themselves while I stayed behind to care for Grandpa. I told myself it didn't matter. This was what family did, right? But as the weeks passed, something inside me started to shift. Grandpa wasn't the same anymore. His eyes were dull, his hands trembled, and his once boisterous laugh had turned into little more than a soft wheeze. And every time I helped him get to the bathroom or fed him his meals, I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on me. Still, I kept going. This was family. I couldn't let him down. But then, one evening, 2 days before the family was supposed to return, I got the call. It wasn't from Mum. It wasn't from Dad. It wasn't from anyone I knew. It was from a lawyer. The voice on the other end was cold, professional. Ms. Davis. The man asked. Yes. I answered, my heart beginning to race for reasons I couldn't understand. I'm calling regarding your grandfather, Mr. James Carter. Is everything okay? I asked, the words stumbling out. I'm afraid not. He passed away earlier this afternoon. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at Grandpa, sitting in his chair in front of the TV, his head leaning slightly to the side. He was gone. Before I could even process the reality of it, the lawyer's next words hit me like a punch in the stomach. We will need you to come in. You're the first person we've contacted. Your grandfather's will has been read, and he's made some unusual decisions. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. I didn't know what to think. Grandpa had a will. Grandpa had decisions. And why was I the first to be called? I hung up the phone, my mind spinning. Grandpa had always been a quiet man, never one to speak of his wealth or his affairs. But now, I had to know what kind of decisions he'd made, what kind of legacy he left behind, but I had no idea just how much his will would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I couldn't stop replaying the lawyer's words in my mind. Unusual decisions. The next morning, I drove to the law office in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. Grandpa's house still felt like it belonged to him. His chair was just the way he left it, his slippers by the door. But it wasn't the same anymore. It was as if everything had changed in the blink of an eye. And I wasn't sure how to feel. When I arrived, the lawyer, Mr. Collins, greeted me with a polite but distant smile. He was older, graying at the temples, with sharp glasses that reflected his cold, professional demeanor, Ms. Davis, he said, leading me into a small conference room. Thank you for coming in. I know this is a difficult time. I nodded, but said nothing. My thoughts were still on Grandpa, the one who had been there for me when no one else was, and now he was gone, and I didn't even know why I was sitting in this room. Mr. Collins handed me a thick folder, the kind that looked like it had too many secrets inside. Your grandfather's will was quite specific, he said, and it involves you. My heart skipped. I hadn't expected that. In what way? Well, it's not just the usual inheritance. He adjusted his glasses and glanced at the papers in front of him, then back at me. You were listed as the primary beneficiary, Ms. Davis. but there are additional instructions. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Mr. Collins opened the will and began reading aloud. James Carter, being of sound mind and body, hereby revoke any previous wills and declare this to be my last will and testament. To my daughter, Linda Davis, I leave my family home in the countryside, along with the sum of $50,000. I blinked in surprise. Mum had never mentioned anything about a home in the countryside. Grandpa had always been private about his assets. To my granddaughter, Lily Davis, I leave my savings account, the amount of which I believe will help you with your future. However, it is my wish that you use it to pursue your dreams, do not squander it on frivolous things. A small smile tugged at my lips. Grandpa had always been practical. He'd probably known I'd use the money to finally finish the art school degree I'd put off for years. But then came the part that knocked the wind out of me. To my daughter, Linda's husband, Greg Davis, I leave nothing. He is to have no claim on my estate. And to my granddaughter, Lily Davis, I leave the rest of my estate, including all property, investments, and my full share of Carter Enterprises. I blinked, reading the words again. Grandpa had left me everything. Everything. The estate, the business, the property, all of it. But what did this mean? Why me? Why hadn't he told anyone? Mr. Collins paused, watching me closely. There is more, he said, as though he were testing my reaction. I swallowed, nodding. What else? There is a clause, he continued, his voice lowering. A condition. The inheritance is only valid if you choose to take control of Carter Enterprises within 6 months of his death. If you decline, everything reverts to the Board of Trustees. But here's the catch: if you accept, you must also take responsibility for the unfinished business, including the debts he's accrued. The room seemed to close in on me. I felt dizzy, my thoughts racing. Why had Grandpa made me the sole heir? And what had he gotten himself into? Why me? I whispered. Why not Mum, or anyone else? Mr. Collins sighed, his fingers pressing against the documents. It's clear from the will that your grandfather had his reasons. But there's one final thing. I leaned forward, my breath caught in my chest. What's that? Mr. Collins slid a letter across the table, stamped with Grandpa's signature. This letter, he said, is for you, Lily. Only you. My hand shook as I picked it up. The weight of it felt heavier than all the rest combined. I opened the envelope slowly, knowing that whatever it contained would change everything. The words inside weren't what I expected. Lily, everyone, I trust. But know this, there are people who will come for this business. They'll try to force you out. Don't let them win. The truth lies beneath what you see on the surface. Keep digging. Trust no one, especially not those closest to you. My mind spun. People would come for the business. Who? And what was the truth he was talking about? I looked up at Mr. Collins, but he didn't answer my questions. He just gave me a serious look, as if he already knew the storm was coming. The lawyer handed me the final document. A stack of financial records that made my stomach turn. Grandpa had left me with a legacy, but it was one built on secrets, debts, and shadows. And now, I had to decide, was I ready to face what Grandpa had left behind, or would I walk away and let it all fall apart? The choice was mine. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying the lawyer's words over and over in my head. Grandpa's will had left me everything, but why? Why me? And why had he kept such a secret life? The letter he'd left behind had shaken me to my core. The truth lies beneath what you see on the surface. Keep digging. But what truth was Grandpa referring to? What was buried beneath all the business dealings and wealth? I'd never thought of him as anything other than a quiet, private man, a bit of a recluse, but certainly not someone involved in anything shady. I sat in Grandpa's office that afternoon, staring at the financial records Mr. Collins had handed me. The more I scanned through the documents, the clearer it became something wasn't right. There were loans taken out in Grandpa's name, money funneled into anonymous accounts, payments made to people I didn't recognize. And then, there was one glaring red flag, a massive unexplained withdrawal just a month before his death, listed only as emergency funds. I stared at that line for what felt like hours, my mind racing. An emergency fund? What kind of emergency could Grandpa have been involved in? I decided to take a closer look at the people Grandpa had done business with. Most of the names seemed ordinary in real estate investors, lawyers, contractors. But there was one name that stuck out: Vince Carmichael. The name was attached to a large, recurring payment made to an offshore account. And there was a small note in the margin that read, "Keep quiet. No one must know about this." Vince Carmichael? I'd never heard of him before, but Grandpa had written it down like it was something serious. I went straight to the one place I knew I could find answers: Grandpa's old filing cabinet. It hadn't been touched in years, and it was locked with a small key I'd found in his desk drawer. Inside, I found folders full of documents, receipts, and letters, but one folder, at the very back, caught my attention. It was labeled Carmichael in bold, underlined letters. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were pages of correspondence, contracts, and strange, cryptic notes. One letter was dated just a few months ago, signed by Grandpa, addressed to a bank in the Cayman Islands. It looked like a routine transactional except for one line: "The funds are to be used for a special project. As discussed. I trust you understand the importance of this." I pulled my phone from my pocket and quickly searched the name Vince Carmichael. What I found made my blood run cold. Carmichael was known in certain circles as a fixer, someone who dealt with messy situations, often involving high-profile people. He was involved in everything from shady business deals to laundering money for some of the most powerful men in the country. I stared at my phone screen, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. Grandpa had gotten mixed up in something much bigger than I ever could have imagined. The emergency funds, the strange payments to Carmichael, it was all connected. And now, it looked like Grandpa had left me a dangerous legacy to unravel. I sat back in the chair, my mind racing. What had Grandpa gotten himself into? And more importantly, why had he left me to clean up the mess? Before I could process what I'd just uncovered, the doorbell rang. I looked at the clock. It was already late in the evening. Who could be here at this hour? I got up, feeling the weight of what was at stake, and walked toward the door. But when I opened it, I froze. Standing on the other side, in the dim porch light, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, with a dark coat and a serious expression. "Ms. Davis?" he asked in a low, controlled voice. "I'm here about your grandfather's will." My heart skipped. "Who are you?" He glanced behind him, making sure no one else was around. "I think we need to talk." The words sent a chill down my spine, and I knew, in that moment, that everything I thought I knew about Grandpa and our family was about to change forever. The man standing in front of me wasn't someone I had ever seen before. His sharp, cold eyes locked onto mine as I stood there, frozen in the doorway. His presence was imposing, and a chill crept over me. "I'm here about your grandfather's will," he repeated, his voice steady, almost rehearsed. "Who are you?" I asked, my heart pounding. My mind raced with questions. Was he another lawyer? A business associate of Grandpa's? He didn't respond right away. Instead, he glanced over his shoulder, as if making sure no one was watching us. He stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "My name is David Hayes," he said. "I was an associate of your grandfather's." That didn't help at all. I didn't know any David Hayes. Grandpa had always kept his business dealings close to the chest. I hesitated, but opened the door a little wider, motioning for him to step inside. "What exactly are you here for?" David glanced at the dim hallway, his eyes scanning the place quickly, before stepping inside. "We need to talk about what your grandfather left behind," he said, lowering his voice. "You're in danger, Lily." The words hit me like a cold wave. "What do you mean, in danger?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. He looked around once more before closing the door behind him. "This isn't about inheritance or money," he said, his voice serious. "Your grandfather's will wasn't just about passing down assets. He left you something much more valuable, something that people are willing to kill for." I felt a jolt of panic. "What are you talking about?" David walked over to the kitchen table, where Grandpa's papers were spread out, and he carefully flipped through them, his face darkening as he examined each one. "This," he said, "is bigger than you think. The money, the properties, those are distractions. Your grandfather was in too deep. He didn't just leave you an estate, he left you a target." I could barely breathe. "What target?" David paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Do you know about the things your grandfather was really involved in? His investments, the shady deals with people like Vince Carmichael?" I nodded slowly, remembering the terrifying realization from earlier about the suspicious financial activity. "I know a little." "Little is an understatement." David's face tightened as he spoke. "You're just scratching the surface, Lily. The business dealings, the money he moved your grandfather was being blackmailed, but not by someone in the shadows. He was working with people in power, and now, those people want what he promised to give them. They want you." My chest tightened. I took a step back. "Wait, I don't understand. Why would anyone want me?" David sighed and turned toward me, his expression more intense now. "Because your grandfather knew too much, and he knew he wouldn't be around much longer, so he did something drastic to protect you. But people like Carmichael, and even some in the government, want to erase everything he left behind, including you." My head spun. "I don't know what to do with this," I whispered. "I've only just found out about all of this. I don't want to be part of it." David's eyes softened slightly, though the tension in his voice remained. "You don't have a choice. You're already part of it, and now, you need to decide if you want to survive." The weight of his words sank in. I wanted to scream, to refuse it all, but I could feel the pressure building. The sense of something darker looming over me. David pulled out an envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It was sealed with an official-looking wax stamp. "This is for you. It's the next step your grandfather left for you. I can't explain more right now, but if you want answers, this will lead you to them." I took the envelope, my hands shaking. "What's inside?" He didn't answer, read it. "And don't trust anyone, Lily, not even the people you think you can count on." He turned to leave, but stopped by the door. "And one more thing," he said, pausing before looking back at me. "You should know Carmichael has already made his move. He'll be coming for you. You can't stay here much longer." With that, he was gone. I stood there, in the silence of the house. The envelope heavy in my hands, the weight of everything I had just learned, crashing down on me. I had no idea what was coming, but one thing was clear: my grandfather's secret was no longer just his. It was mine now, and if I didn't act quickly, I might not live long enough to uncover the truth. I stared at the envelope in my hands, still trying to process everything that David had said. The air felt thick, oppressive, and every sound in the house seemed to echo louder than it should. The weight of Grandpa's legacy was suffocating, and now? I was part of something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. I needed to know what was inside the envelope, whatever it was. It was the key to everything, but a part of me hesitated. If I opened it, I'd be stepping even further into a world I didn't understand, one that was dangerous and full of people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. But David was right. I didn't have a choice. I tore open the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was typed, not handwritten, and there was no greeting, just a set of instructions. "Lily, if you're reading this, it means you've reached the point of no return. The information you now possess is more dangerous than anything you could have imagined. There are people, powerful people, who want this hidden. The only way to protect yourself is to follow the steps I've outlined below. First, you must contact Dr. Julian Grant at the address below. He's the one who can help you understand what I've uncovered. Trust him. He's the only one I could trust. Second, you must destroy everything in the old safe. There is no record of it, but the contents must be erased. The papers, the files, everything." The last line gave me chills. Old safe. Grandpa had a safe. I'd never seen it, but I knew it was somewhere in the house. He'd always been secretive about it, never mentioning what it contained. Now, it seemed like it was the final piece of the puzzle. I reread the instructions, my heart racing. I needed answers, But I also knew there was no going back once I started this. Whatever was in that safe, whatever Dr. Grant knew, was the key to everything. And whatever dangers it entailed, I had no choice but to face them. I grabbed my jacket and made my way to the garage. The safe had to be somewhere inside the house. Grandpa's old workshop was dark and cold, filled with dust and memories of days long past. I searched through boxes of old tools, some of them rusty and worn from years of neglect. Then, I saw a small, unassuming door in the back of the room. I turned the handle. The small safe was hidden behind a false wall, tucked away in a corner that no one had bothered to check in years. My hands shook as I tried to remember the combination. Grandpa had always been meticulous, always organized. I guessed at a few numbers: his birthday, Mum's, then Claire's. Finally, the safe clicked open. Inside was a stack of manila folders, each one marked with dates and names I didn't recognize. But it was the final folder on top that caught my eye. It was sealed with the same wax stamp from the letter. Carmichael was written across the front in bold letters. I pulled it out, my heart pounding. As I opened the folder, I found a series of contracts, photographs, and more bank records. This was the proof, the damning evidence that Grandpa had been blackmailed by Carmichael, used as a pawn in a game of high-stakes corruption. And then I found something that made my blood run cold: Carmichael's personal notes. He'd been behind everything: the loans, the illegal deals, the fake charities, and he had planned to force Grandpa to sell off the land. Grandpa had fought back, secretly amassing his own evidence, and had decided to expose him. But before he could act, he had been silenced. And that silence had come in the form of a car accident. The truth hit me harder than I expected. Grandpa wasn't just a victim of circumstance. He had been fighting back, gathering secrets to take down the people who had used him. And now, it was up to me to finish what he started. I closed the folder, my thoughts racing. I needed to get to Dr. Grant, but I knew the clock was ticking. Carmichael, and the people backing him, wouldn't stop until they had everything Grandpa had left behind. The final pieces of the puzzle were in my hands. But the danger was only beginning. The door creaked open behind me, and I spun around, expecting anyone, but it was Lila. She stepped inside, her eyes wide, searching the room. "Dad, are you all right?" I stood there, holding the folder tight. There was no turning back now. The truth was out. It was time to make the final choice: fight for what Grandpa had started, or walk away and let the past swallow us whole. The only question left was whether or not I had the strength to finish this. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let my grandfather's sacrifice be in vain. And if I had to fight, I would. No matter the cost. If you found this story gripping, make sure to give it a like, share it with someone who believes in justice, and subscribe to the channel. There's always more to uncover when the past won't stay buried.